又一个债主变股东啊，这次是呢刀测股份。
Another creditor has become a shareholder. This time it's Gauzy, a company you might be familiar with. Runergy has already deceived many creditors. This time, Runergy owes Gauzy 150 million yuan, and when they discussed how to handle it, Runergy said, "I have no money. What should we do?" Gauzy didn't have a solution either. If they couldn't recover the 150 million yuan, it would be a lost cause, so they agreed to take a stake in the company instead. After negotiations, Gauzy invested 100 million yuan for about 1% of Runergy's shares and became a new shareholder. The remaining 50 million yuan will be paid in installments. It's rumored that a whole group of creditors are on their way.
The Chinese photovoltaic industry is going through an unprecedented winter. Runergy, once ranked third globally in photovoltaic cell shipments, is trying to clear its debt of nearly 30 billion yuan by using a debt-for-equity swap. It intends to relaunch its IPO and secure a chance for survival. The debt-for-equity swap comes with a promise. Runergy Company has committed to completing an IPO for merging with an A-share listed company by the specified deadline. The agreed deadline for the IPO is December 31st, 2028. From February to July this year, a total of 7 companies have participated in Runergy's debt-for-equity swap, with the total amount exceeding 1.6 billion yuan. According to public data, the pre-investment valuation is about 8 million yuan, which is still far below the 40 million yuan valuation when the IPO was first planned. According to sources, there are still companies in talks with Runergy, hoping to become the next shareholder. A photovoltaic industry insider told China Entrepreneur that Runergy's aggressive debt-for-equity swap strategy shows that the company's IPO goal is clear, but it is evident that launching an IPO with such high debt is a difficult task. Analyst Fang Wenjin from Oilchem's photovoltaic industry chain said that predicting the development of the photovoltaic industry within the next 5 years is challenging, and whether Runergy can remain in the market will ultimately depend on whether it can become profitable. Several Chinese media outlets have reported that this situation feels like a gamble. Runergy Company, officially known as Jiangsu Renyang New Energy Technology Company Limited, was founded in 2013 and is headquartered in Yangcheng, Jiangsu Province. Its official website describes it as a company focused on the research, production, and sales of high-efficiency solar cells and modules. In 2019, Runergy was ranked among the top 5 global battery manufacturers. By 2020, it rose to third in global shipments, only behind Tongwei Company and ICO Solar. It held this position for 3 consecutive years until 2022. In 2022, Runergy announced its IPO plan to raise 4 billion yuan, with an overall valuation reaching up to 40 billion yuan at one point. At the end of 2022, the company completed 2 rounds of capital increases, with a pre-investment valuation of over 6.5 billion yuan. Well-known industry manager Tang Jun also joined Runergy as its president at the time. However, in 2023, the photovoltaic industry saw a total new installed capacity of 216 gigawatts, nearly the sum of the previous 4 years' total additions. According to media statistics, industry leaders such as Tongwei, Jinko Solar, and Longyi Green Energy continued expanding, with a cumulative investment budget of nearly 300 billion yuan. As the industry faces overcapacity and continued price declines, the photovoltaic index dropped by more than 40% in 2023, entering its decline phase. In the first half of 2023, Runergy fell out of the top 3 global shipment rankings for the first time. By the end of the year, it dropped further to 5th place. In May 2024, Runergy's U.S. subsidiary was accused of patent infringement by Trina Solar. In June, the registration approval for its IPO expired. By July, multiple suppliers filed lawsuits against Runergy. Meanwhile, several of Runergy's production bases were reported to have suspended operations. According to Infolink, the company's photovoltaic cell shipments in the first half of 2024 show that Runergy had fallen out of the global top 5. As of December 31st, 2024, its total assets were 36.4 billion yuan, with liabilities around 29 billion yuan, and net assets of about 7.4 billion yuan. The debt-to-asset ratio was close to 80%, and the company suffered a net loss of nearly 900 million yuan for the year. In 2024, Runergy became a key player in the unsuccessful largest photovoltaic acquisition in China. On the evening of August 13, 2024, Tongwei Company, which is based in Sichuan, announced that it had signed an agreement with Runergy and its related parties, as well as Jiangsu Yueda Group. It planned to acquire no less than 51% of Runergy's sales, with a total investment of up to 5 billion yuan. Tongwei is a leading company in the silicon material and battery sectors in China, and is the largest battery manufacturer in the world. However, on February 14, 2025, Tongwei decided to terminate its intention to increase investment in Runergy. By the end of September 2024, Yueda Group, a state-owned enterprise in Yangcheng, Jiangsu, increased its investment in Runergy by 1 billion yuan, becoming the company's largest shareholder. As a result, Runergy's chairman was changed from Tao Longzhong to Zhang Naiwen. The investment from Yueda Group provided Runergy with financial support, allowing it to resume its IPO plans. In Runergy's past development, Yueda Group has always played a central role. In 2020, Runergy's operating location was moved from Kunshan to the Yangcheng Economic Development Zone. Until the current round of creditors lining up for debt-to-equity swaps, Yueda Group and its controlling companies still stood behind Runergy's founder, Tao Longzhong. Runergy and Tao bear joint liability for the full amount. If the primary responsible parties are unable to fulfill their debt obligations, the supplementary responsible parties are required to assume responsibility proportionally. Industry insiders believe this is the core reason Runergy was able to convert debt into equity. A Chinese blog article recently pointed out that Yueda Group, a state-owned enterprise, has now fully taken over Runergy. Some of the old team members, including Tang Jun, have left or moved to secondary positions. The article mentions that Yueda's strong takeover has raised concerns among many photo industry leaders, as excessive involvement from local governments may make this round of reshuffling unusually difficult and long. Although Runergy owes suppliers significant amounts of money, the state-owned major shareholders-related companies have continued to profit through Runergy. When the company faces trouble, the major shareholder escapes unscathed. The article concludes that, based on the current situation in the photovoltaic industry, it is highly unlikely that it will successfully land on the A-share market. Chinese economist Heng Qing stated that both the photovoltaic and electric vehicle industries are touted as the new productive forces that the Chinese Communist Party is pushing. But Chinese electric vehicle company BYD has incurred massive losses, and it's unclear when the company might collapse. This is why BYD is often referred to as the Evergrande of the new energy vehicle industry, a reference to the collapsed real estate giant. Runergy is facing a similar crisis. The primary goal of a business is to make money, but that's no longer the case for many companies due to excessive debt. They find it difficult to raise funds, so they're negotiating with creditors to convert debt into equity, turning debts into shares and using them to offset liabilities, with dividends to be paid at the end of the year. If the company eventually goes bankrupt, creditors will suffer substantial losses, so they accept this situation. He said, this way, Runergy can temporarily relieve its debt pressure, but the market is currently unfriendly to photovoltaic companies. While Chinese industries like photovoltaics are globally competitive, they're being resisted worldwide due to dumping, which undermines local businesses in other countries. Professor Shen Guoxiang from the Department of International Affairs and Business at Nanhua University in Taiwan pointed out that in China's capital markets, there is high-risk symbiotic gray area between private enterprises and creditors. Debt-for-equity swaps are originally meant to resolve bad assets and ease debt pressure, but due to structural contradictions, they have become a temporary lifeline, failing to truly address asset liquidity and cash flow issues. Sun further explained that in China, asset restructuring and debt extension are often highly influenced by man-made decisions, with banks, local governments, and enterprises forming a networked relationship, engaging in strategic games rather than following pure market principles. Debt-for-equity swaps often become political and relational operations, rather than purely financial engineering. Due to the lack of market-based liquidation channels, these companies continue to operate as zombie companies by rolling over old debt to new debt. Regarding the intervention of local state-owned enterprises to support Runergy, Li Hengqing said that most of China's provinces and cities are running fiscal deficits, and local governments can only rely on state-owned enterprises to support these photovoltaic industries. However, state-owned enterprises are not performing well either, and with all fronts under pressure, it's likely that they won't be able to save these companies. Sun also believes that with local hidden debts continuing to accumulate and land-based finances running dry, the pressure to resolve debt issues will only grow, and it's unlikely that the government will be able to cover everything. Under the backdrop of China's ongoing economic decline, the overall losses in the photovoltaic industry are becoming even more severe. In 2024, the 64 listed photovoltaic companies saw their profits turn into losses of around 30 billion yuan, a drastic change from the 100 billion yuan profit in 2023. The total revenue of photovoltaic listed companies for the year was approximately 931 billion yuan, shrinking by about 22% compared to the previous year. Once thriving companies with revenues in the billions have all disappeared by 2024. The industry's overall net profit dropped dramatically from 104.9 billion yuan in 2023 to a loss of 29.7 billion yuan in 2024, marking a shocking decline. Despite the government's repeated efforts to push for production control and anti-competition, various links in the industrial chain are still mired in losses. On the evening of July 14, 2025, nearly 1,500 listed companies released their performance forecasts for the first half of 2025, with over 820 companies expecting losses. In fact, since the second half of 2023, the entire photovoltaic industry has been plagued by news of layoffs, shutdowns, and bankruptcies. In June of this year, Shenzhen Xinghao Precision Technology Company Limited planned to transfer 100% of its shares to its wholly owned subsidiary, Anhui Xinguang. The reason for this is the overcapacity in the photovoltaic industry, which has led to price competition and a significant decline in sales margins. Chinese-American economist Davy J. Wang stated that China's photovoltaic industry largely relies on government subsidies and grants to make profits. Essentially, companies enter the market in a rush to get government subsidies, and because these subsidies exist, they often don't focus on reducing costs, resulting in severe homogeneity. A Chinese blogger commented that the anti-competition movement in China's photovoltaic industry should start with eliminating export tax rebates.
What is the export tax rebate? When our export volume was relatively low, the government, in order to encourage exports, would give us 13 yuan for every 100 yuan exported. The photovoltaic industry was the same. On December 1st, 2020, the government reduced the export tax rebate from 13% to 9%. However, rebate income remains the main source of profit for most photovoltaic companies. So, in the current anti-competition environment, the first thing should be to eliminate the rebate altogether.
The blogger gave an example. According to an announcement, Jinko Solar received 4.69 billion yuan in tax rebates for the first 3 quarters of 2024, which can be seen as the net market value of its export tax rebates. In the first half of 2024, LONGi Green Energy received about 3 billion yuan in tax rebates. In 2024, JA Solar's company in Yiwu had exports of 4.6 billion yuan and received 490 million yuan in rebates. Therefore, the primary source of profit for China's photovoltaic industry is likely to be tax rebate income. The blogger urged that, in the current anti-competition context, the government should present some concrete solutions to address the issue. This should include eliminating subsidies and tax rebates, with the direct removal of the 9% export tax rebate in the photovoltaic industry. On July 21st, a Chinese blogger analyzed the state of the photovoltaic industry, which has been in decline since 2021. The blogger discussed the future outlook and focused on 2 representative companies, Tongwei Company and LONGi Green Energy. Tongwei's stock price has fallen from a high of 70 yuan in 2021 to 20 yuan now, a decline of over 70%. LONGi Green Energy has seen a much steeper drop, falling from a high of 125 to 16 yuan, losing 87% of its value. According to the mid-year report forecast for 2025, Tongwei expects a loss of 4.9 to 5.2 billion yuan in the first half of the year, while LONGi expects a loss of 2.4 to 2.8 billion yuan. The blogger pointed out that the entire photovoltaic industry is still in a widespread state of losses, primarily due to overcapacity and intense internal competition. Most photovoltaic companies are going for integration, doing everything from upstream silicon materials to wafers to midstream solar cells and downstream modules.
If you do everything, you lose the concept of a supply chain and won't need to buy materials from other companies. Many of these companies aren't making a profit. For example, when the cost of silicone materials fell to 40,000 yuan per ton, it was already close to Tongwei's cost price. Medium-sized companies are even worse, losing money on every ton they produce, and module manufacturers are the same. The industry's past characteristic was that whoever was cheaper would get the order, so companies had no choice but to continuously lower prices to survive.
The blogger believes that the worst is yet to come. In 2024, China's newly listed photovoltaic capacity was about 270 gigawatts, while Europe's was around 65 gigawatts. However, module production in 2024 has already exceeded 580 gigawatts, and silicon wafer production is even more excessive, reaching 757 gigawatts. This shows that the industry is still in an overcapacity state. In 2025, China's projected new photovoltaic installations were between 215 gigawatts to 225 gigawatts, with the global total at around 596 gigawatts. However, by the first half of 2025, actual installations had already surpassed 200 gigawatts. This is because, according to an official notice from February, projects starting after June 1st, 2025, will have their electricity prices determined through market-based bidding, which led to investors rushing to install capacity. The blogger also noted that while there was a rush to install in the first half of the year, installation would decrease in the second half. As a result, many companies are expected to experience equipment maintenance and intermittent shutdowns in the second half. There are also predictions that even without production in the second half, the stockpile of silicon materials will be enough to support the annual usage of all companies. He added that the photovoltaic industry is fundamentally a manufacturing sector, with low technical barriers to entry, allowing many companies to cross over into the industry. This low threshold, combined with product homogeneity, has led to intense competition. Although the government has been emphasizing anti-competition, the actual effects are unlikely to be significant.
On
one hand, local governments still want enterprises to operate at full capacity, even if the capacity isn't being sold. As long as you produce, you can boost local GDP and tax revenue. On the other hand, companies worry that reducing production will shrink their market share, which will be taken by other companies. So production cuts are a false proposition in the private sector.
Chairman of solar company Hua Sheng recently said in an interview that the photovoltaic industry is severely overcompetitive, and he foresees a terrifying trend that could become a reality in 2025. First, a collapse in photovoltaic product prices, followed by a collapse in stock prices, then a collapse in the bond market, a collapse in the ratings and credit of photovoltaic companies, and finally, a collapse of the entire industry.